if you're a US tech company seeing advancements in, relatively cheap open source AI models while you're spending billions and billions of dollars on some nebulous idea of superintelligence, you might want to rethink that strategy.
We'll get back to your video shortly, but first, many of you right now will be watching the show on your phone, tablet or laptop, completely unaware that this very second someone could be accessing your device and stealing your data. Using the internet without private internet access, VPN, is like letting Facebook post your diary. Your friends and family can read all your dirty secrets. A virtual private network, or VPN for short, is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. It shields your digital life from those eyes who are looking to exploit your private information. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network at airports, coffee shops, friends' houses, or even at your own home, your data is at risk of being stolen. Your device is transmitting a great amount of information out into the open, which can be viewed by various different entities before reaching the intended website, such as your ISP, government censors, advertising companies, and more. Hackers on the same network can easily steal your personal data. With PIA, you're protected. But there's more. With PIA, you can access all your usual streaming services, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+, even if you're outside your own region. All you need to do is open the app, select a server from 91 countries, and just like that, you're digitally there. And it's not just for fun. With recent legislation, more and more content is being restricted. PIA allows you to access the content and news that you want to watch. And with one PIA subscription, you can protect an unlimited number of devices, so that's the whole family covered. Follow the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen now to receive a massive 86% discount, making it just £1.57 per month. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and to top it off, you'll receive 4 additional months for free. Head to piavpn.com now and take control of your digital life.
Lauren Good, Senior Correspondent at Wired, thank you for joining me on the Tech Report today.
Thanks so much for having me.
There's been a few things I want to talk about today, this last few weeks. But let's start with the Meta AI hiring freeze. Meta has said, I think in quotes, it's downsizing its AI department and is apparently considering using third-party AI to fuel its future developments. But it was only in June when Zuckerberg invested, I think it was 14 point something billion dollars to buy Scale AI. And in July, when he poached some researchers from OpenAI, what has happened in the month since then that they're now downsizing?
Well, there are at least a few things that could potentially be going on here. One is that the market for AI is changing so rapidly. I mean, it feels like every day for those of us who work in the news, that there could have been changes in patterns or demands that sort of led Meta to make some of these more recent decisions. Another thing to consider is that in Meta's business, it's using AI in a variety of ways. It's not just wholly focused on these super intelligence efforts. If you listen to any Meta earnings report, from recent months, it talks about how machine learning and AI are fueling a lot of different parts of its business within its core products, things like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. And those are very, very profitable for Meta. And so, as it's considering which avenues to take as it dives deeper into AI, it could be looking at superintelligence as something that's a little bit more like a very long-term bet versus the returns it's going to get more immediately from AI. And so as such, it could be sort of shifting its spending as it sees these things evolve.
I think Zuckerberg said, I think it was last month, that superintelligence was in sight. But there's now been reports that they're completely scrapping their model. And I think the CEO from Scale AI, which they'd hired as part of that buy-in in June, but they're now scrapping it. And so do you think this could be a smart pivot to, like you say, just starting afresh from a position where they now know a lot more? Or is Meta struggling to stay relevant, perhaps, after investing so heavily in things like the metaverse?
I think yes and yes. I think both things can be true at the same time. And I'm glad you brought up the metaverse too, because the metaverse is and has been a huge spend for Meta. And I think with very little return so far. I don't know many people who want to spend the majority of their days hanging out in the metaverse. I certainly don't. And so, that may be in part of its strategic thinking right now. I think that relying on open source models or building, a model on top of open source technology is something that Meta has been doing to date. Superintelligence is kind of this new definition that's actually relatively undefined. No one's quite sure what the heck it means. That's a shifting definition. And that is something that would require an intense amount of capital to build this kind of frontier model and to try to get Meta ahead in that space. So it's not surprising to me that it is now looking to partners like Midjourney, for example, for image generation, to try to bolster some other elements of AI, because it's just a little bit less expensive for Meta to do that through partnerships. I also think part of the thought process could be what's going on with Chinese models like DeepSeek, which really sort of rattled folks in the US AI industry because of what this group was reportedly able to accomplish with relatively few resources, without having to rely on a really heavy, expensive frontier AI model. And so if you're a US tech company seeing advancements in, relatively cheap open source AI models while you're spending billions and billions of dollars on some nebulous idea of superintelligence, you might want to rethink that strategy.
And so Wired was reporting actually that there's been some defections from Meta over to OpenAI, having previously poached some researchers from OpenAI. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Wired reported earlier this week, my colleagues Zoe Schiffer and Will Knight had the story, that a few folks who had very recently joined Meta's Superintelligence Lab have already decided to leave. There was another researcher who had been at Meta for a very long time who also decided to leave. But I think the so-called defectors are of interest too, because those are the folks that presumably Meta was putting a lot of the hiring pressure on and putting a lot of their hiring resources behind to lure this top talent to Meta. And to learn that they have decided to leave after just sort of getting a glimpse inside this super secret, super intelligence lab, certainly raises a lot of questions about how exactly that lab is being run, any kind of bureaucracy that may be getting in the way of what those researchers had hoped to accomplish upon joining there. And essentially what they thought the future might be if they stuck around. Meta has said this is a pretty normal part of the hiring process. It's an intense process. Sometimes people are going through interviews or have even signed on and decided to leave. I think it's personally a little bit unusual. There's also a lot of attention on Meta's efforts to hire right now too. So these defections really stand out.
Do you think that maybe once they got to Meta, they somewhat discovered that maybe it wasn't going as fast or as quickly as some of these other companies that they'd come from?
I'm not quite sure. We don't really know the details of what these researchers discovered or what led them to make this decision. It might not be related to the technology itself. It could be related to the leadership or bureaucracy or some other factor that, to this point is unknown. We certainly hope to find out more. Personally, I think that if I joined a company for a multi-million-dollar pay package, which by the way doesn't happen that often in journalism, as you might know, and left within a month, I would think there's something amiss there.
And sort of leads a little bit into this wider disillusionment that seems to be happening among some groups that are monitoring or involved with the AI. You've had obviously OpenAI CEO Sam Altman saying that AI is in a bubble. You've had an MIT report revealing that I think it's only 5% of businesses that have incorporated AI are actually seeing any sort of revenue returns from that investment. Where do you see the AI industry going in the next few years, short of a generational transition to generalized intelligence or superintelligence.
Right. Yeah, it feels a little bit as though the industry has moved away from the hype around AGI at this moment, and obviously still trying to figure out whatever super intelligence is. If you know, please let me know, because I would like to know. I feel like I wake up every day and it's a new opinion on whether or not it's in a bubble. I tend to think that the way the industry is going to go, over the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years is the big AI companies that have spent a lot of money building out these frontier AI models are going to try to commercialize these products. And a lot of that is going to be through the enterprise market. I mean, yes, there are a lot of consumers using ChatGPT, paying for ChatGPT, and Anthropic's Claude and Google Gemini and similar services for sure. But I had written a story for Wired a couple of years ago after ChatGPT first came out, and there was a lot of buzz around it that I thought the future of this kind of AI, this flavor of AI, was unsexy enterprise apps, which basically means they're going to try to make a lot of, big deals with corporations to put their products there in their seats there. And that also just becomes a form of recurring revenue for them. Now, the question is whether or not the cost of training and inference and all these things that go into building these AI models could possibly be offset in the near future by even large enterprise customers. And I think the answer is no. I think that there are, can a company generate revenue? Can an AI company generate revenue from this? Yes. Can it be profitable? Well, it depends on the amount of your spend. And I think there are a few comparisons being made to this. One is Amazon's AWS, which was the unprofitable, I think there are a few comparisons that you could make right now. One is something like Amazon's AWS, which Amazon wasn't profitable for a very, very long time, but basically through Amazon Web Services was smartly starting to sort of underpin the entire internet and all of the apps that we use. And then eventually, it became a huge part of Amazon's business. Another comparison that people make is very grandiose, is well, this is just like the internet. This is like investors have a lot of FOMO and they want to get in early because the AI is the next internet. And then there's another comparison that could be made, which is, well, is this just the next blockchain? Is this the thing that everyone was talking about 2 years ago and frothing at the mouth over and investors scrambling to get into? And we still have yet to see kind of any real significant returns, and companies have yet to see any real significant returns from that. And I certainly can't say which of those that it is. I know AI is not going away. I do think right now questioning its viability in the short term is a reasonable thing to ask.
So in light of that, and I hope you can forgive this analogy, do you think this bubble will grow, shrink, pop, or solidify?
I think throughout the history of AI, there have been up cycles and down cycles. I don't think we're headed towards a quote unquote AI winter to the best of my knowledge, but I could see how there might be some kind of maybe constriction or adjustment in the market in near term. But at the same time, I don't think it's going away.
So that a lot of people have been saying that we will achieve AGI or superintelligence in the next few years to a decade or whatever else. Do you see that sort of development being able to catch up with the bubble that's been blown, or is it just there will need to be some amount of restriction or shrinkage?
I personally tend to find these predictions of AGI in terms like it to be a little bit, honestly, self-aggrandizing on the parts of the companies, the purveyors of AI, because by suggesting that it's going to happen and putting a timestamp on it, it's sort of suggesting that that company is absolutely capable of producing that kind of, highly intelligent AI. And, it's sort of like saying, well, 90% of companies are going to be using AI to code in 6 months. And it's, but the person who said that happened to be the leader of Anthropic, who makes one of the best coding platforms. So there's a lot of upside for the folks who tend to make these suggestions about AGI. I can't really say for sure whether or not the quote unquote arrival of something like AGI is tied directly to whether or not we're in a bubble, whether that bubble will burst. I think, if anything, what we'll see is the definition of that super intelligent AI continue to shift and to evolve, and the goalposts continue to move around that. And then, it's like a lot of other things that we write about and we cover, then it just becomes almost like a follow the money situation, which is, where is this actually making money? Where is this actually being used? Where is it actually being sold? Versus, have we reached super intelligence or artificial general intelligence on a societal level? And, are we all doomed? Or does that mean that we all get to quit our day jobs and live in some universal basic income utopia, or whatever idea Silicon Valley is putting out there at the moment?
And so just shifting on to a different story, I've been seeing Musk is suing Apple and OpenAI for after a public outburst complaining that they were colluding in an effort to stop his everything app X being at the top of downloads of various different app stores. Why is it Elon Musk suing? Is that really the reason behind it? Is there more to this?
Yeah, so Elon Musk and OpenAI Sam Altman have what you might call long-standing beef. I'm not quite sure that's the technical term for it, but it is very real. And this lawsuit in particular against Apple and OpenAI, I'm not sure it has teeth, to be honest. Elon Musk, being the richest man or one of the richest men in the world, can certainly afford good lawyers, so more may be revealed in time. But I think ultimately we've reported that if you go to the top productivity apps, free productivity apps in the App Store, it shows that Gmail and ChatGPT outrank Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI chatbot. And I think that is reasonable, considering the immense popularity and usage of something like Gmail, and also the fast-growing popularity of something like ChatGPT. Some of Elon Musk's earlier complaints about Sam Altman and OpenAI are not without merit from his perspective. As a lot of people know, Elon Musk was an early co-founder of OpenAI. He left over disagreements about its corporate structure. He formed his own competing AI company in 2018, and since then has expressed his dismay, let's call it, with the way that Sam Altman has turned this originally nonprofit, mission-driven organization around AI into something that has a for-profit arm in order to do this incredible amount of fundraising that Sam Altman has been doing. Now, of course, OpenAI is looking to turn its company into a public benefit corporation. But Elon Musk has taken aim at Sam before because of the way that he sees him getting away from this original mission. This App Store suit seems slightly more petty than that, I would say. I don't know a ton of people who use Grok. I know a lot of people do, but it just seems reasonable to think that it's possible that Grok really just isn't quite as popular as those other apps in the App Store. And I'm not sure there's direct evidence at this point that OpenAI and Apple are directly colluding to prevent Grok from rising in the rankings.
Do you think there could be any truth to the conspiracy theory that Tim Cook and Sam Altman are sharing secret messages behind Elon Musk's back to keep him off of the top charts?
I think that there are a lot of private conversations that happen in Silicon Valley between these top executives, and particularly when they've entered into business partnerships with each other. OpenAI and Apple do have a partnership for OpenAI to provide some of the AI technology behind Apple's AI offerings on the iPhone. In some ways, this is being compared to the kind of partnership that Apple has had with Google over the years, where when you go to use the Safari browser on your iPhone and you run a search, it's actually Google's technology that is powering that search. And so Apple and OpenAI now have this similar kind of relationship. And so, of course, there are conversations that are happening undoubtedly around how their technology should work together. Apple has also traditionally, over the years, the App Store has been around since 2008, had really stringent policies around the kind of content that can and cannot be in apps in the App Store, and also has age restrictions in place for certain apps and that kind of thing. And so there could be elements of different chatbots now that are within the App Store that Apple is fundamentally finding in violation of its content policies. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with Grok at this moment in time. I'm just saying that it does maintain the right to monitor, and restrict some of the content that could appear in its app store.
Do you think that perhaps it's rather the series of embarrassing sort of, I wouldn't say mistakes, but scandals that have come off of Grok in the last, couple of months alone that might actually be the reason that it's not topping the download?
It could be that people are dissuaded from using it because of that. Certainly, we reported in Wired earlier this month that the Grok chatbot on Twitter, which is the version of it that runs, pardon me, I should call it X. I'm still stuck in Twitter, honestly. But the version of it, the version of Grok that runs on X/Twitter was spouting out blatantly anti-Semitic content in a way that was really kind of alarming and we believe was the result of Grok engineers having sort of tweaked the parameters of the AI and what the AI would allow to happen. And so that was something that raised alarm bells for a lot of people. And these AI chatbots are spewing out all kinds of content these days that is sounding alarm bells. And so it's possible that people are dissuaded from using Grok simply for that reason. On the other hand, Grok is apparently creating really flirtatious anime characters for people. So, some people may be drawn to it because of that.
And in terms of some of the alarming stuff that's come out of AI recently, I saw a story this morning of a family that was suing OpenAI, and I think in quite striking words from the mother of a poor child that died, saying, "ChatGPT killed my son." The details of which, if you could explain, would be great. But how did this happen? How did this story come about?
This is a truly horrific story, and unfortunately, it's not the first like it that we've seen reported over the past year or so. To the best of my knowledge, a young man died by suicide, and his parents afterwards, in going through his chat logs with ChatGPT, found messages where the chatbot failed to guide this teen towards, a national crisis hotline or a help hotline. It encouraged the teen to sort of isolate and just chat with the chatbot alone if he was having troubles. It began to glorify suicide and paint these rather explicit images of different ways this teen could engage in harmful activities. And, understandably, the parents are devastated and were shocked by these messages and now, have filed this lawsuit. Last year, it was also reported that a teen died by suicide after engaging in ongoing discussions with a character AI chatbot, which is another service. We reported on that. Wired also reported on a story, my colleague Megan Farokmanesh and I, about a young woman who had been killed in the early 2000s. And later, her avatar resurfaced as an AI chatbot on character AI. And her father was completely floored by this. Like, why is this someone on this service creating a chatbot of my deceased daughter who died many years ago? And so this all goes to say there are so few guardrails in place for this kind of behavior. And the companies will say, no, we have guardrails in place, or we have red teams that are dedicated to sussing out this kind of harmful content. We direct people to crises hotlines if we feel that their chats are veering in that direction. But it's just not enough. And some of those guardrails become less reliable over time the longer that a user continues to chat with these chatbots. And also the chatbots are designed to be a little bit, quote unquote, emotional, have emotional capacity or show that, and also be a little bit sycophantic and tell users, oh yeah, you're so right. Of course you're right in this scenario, or, that's a reasonable expectation or emotion, and continually tell users that. And so if they're in a place of, sorry, I'm going a little long here, but you can see this, it's just such a terrible issue. So you can see how if someone is already in a poor state in terms of their mental health or considering self-harm, how engaging long-term with a chatbot that is encouraging them, that is nudging them, can lead to even more harm. And frankly, I think something has to be done about this.
I think the term I've heard in relation to this sort of thing has been AI psychosis, where people have developed beliefs or it's generally beliefs or delusions related to interactions with an AI or an AI chatbot, should I say, which raises serious questions of, is this technology safe for children to use? Is there a way to stop it being, for lack of a better way of putting it, jailbroken, so that you can ask it how to commit suicide or how to, I don't know, make various toxic banned or controlled chemicals or things like that?
It's an incredibly hard problem to solve, because there is a difference between putting up a parental control around, well, you can't watch this on this video streaming app that the family uses, or you can't access these apps at all in the App Store, or you know what, we're not even going to give you a phone until you're a certain age, right? Those are kind of firm lines to some extent around technology, though, of course, like teenagers will always find ways around these things. You know, with a chat bot, if you're giving a person access to it for some things, maybe a little bit of research for their homework, for example, because of the nature of these chatbots and the way they work, the way they are probabilistic, the way they sort of guess at the next best thing that it should say in response to you, because it's very reasonable or authoritative sounding, because it is essentially spitting out what we, natural language, human sounding language. It's really hard to put up a sort of direct guardrail or block between, well, you can use it for this thing, but you shouldn't use it for this thing. It's a really slippery slope. And I do think that the guardrails need to be strengthened around, harmful content that can come out of these AI chatbots.
Lauren Good, thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks so much, Isaac.